Jai Hind, dear children. Last class we discussed about politics chapter outcomes of democracy. In this chapter we already completed topics like importance of democracy, features of democracy, then about the merits and demerits of democracy. Then we moved directly into the chapter because through this chapter we want to study about the outcomes of democracy, and we can understand this concept with the help of the three spheres of outcomes, democratic outcomes. They are political spheres, economic spheres, and the third one is the social sphere. So first we studied about the political outcomes, in which we studied the reason why democracy is considered as an accountable, responsive, and legitimate government. Why democratic government is considered as accountable government, why it is considered as responsive government, and at the same time why it is considered as a legitimate government, that we studied in detail. Then we studied the reasons why democracy is considered as the best form of government and why it is considered as effective and efficient. Now we are going to study about the other two outcomes of democracy. Which are they? Yeah, about the economic outcomes of democracy and also about the social outcomes of democracy. So first we are going to study in detail about the economic outcomes of democracy. So now we are going to study in detail about the economic outcomes of democracy. A famous statement related to this topic is that although democracy is said to be the solution of all problems, yet it is believed that the economic growth rate in dictatorship is better than that in democratic rule. So once again, although democracy is said to be the solution to all problems, yet it is believed that the economic growth rate in dictatorship is better than that in democratic rule. So we want to just find out what are the reasons why this type of statements and this type of ideas is coming in the minds of the people in our country, that in democratic rule we don't have that much of economic development when we are comparing it with a dictator rule. If democracies are expected to produce good governments, but we can't predict that these democratic government will produce a good economic development. From records also, it is clear that democratic government is not fulfilling 100% these expectations. So it is true that during the last 50 years, from 1950 to 2000, dictatorship have shown slightly higher rate of economic growth in comparison to many of the democracies. So in between these 50 years, from the records and studies, it is clear that there is a higher rate of economic growth in dictatorship when compared with democracies. But this alone cannot be a reason to reject democracy. We know that there are many other factors that determine the economic growth of a country, like population size, global situations, cooperations from other countries, economic priorities adopted by the country. So there are various other factors to determine the economic growth of a country, isn't it? Which are the factors? Population size of the country, global situation of the country, then cooperation from other countries towards this country, and the economic priority adopted by the country. So, however, the difference in the rate of economic development between less developed countries with dictatorship and democracy is negligible. So, the difference in the rate of economic development between less developed countries with dictatorship and democracy is negligible. So even when there is a nominal difference in the rate of economic growth between countries under dictatorship and democracy, it is better to prefer democracy as it has several other positive outcomes. So, on the whole, we can say that although this dictatorship is creating higher rate of economic rate development when compared with democracies, but this democracy is better to prefer because it is having several other positive outcomes when we are comparing it with this dictatorship. That positive outcomes that we are going to study next. So now we are going to study about the positive outcomes of democracy, which gives us a better place rather than the dictatorship. So the first one, it enhances the dignity and the freedom of the citizens, which a dictatorship and other forms of government do not believe. Isn't it? In a democratic government, each and every citizen is having some dignity and freedom that we are not getting in a dictatorship or any other form of government. Another merit is that it accommodates various social divisions. This diversity is very much accommodated or safe in a democratic country that we can't see in this dictator rule or any other forms of rule. Next one, it leaves space and scope for correction of the mistakes that might be committed. Isn't it? In a democratic government, there is a room to correct the mistake, which means that in a democratic rule, the citizens, they are giving their representatives a chance to correct their mistakes that we can't see in a dictator rule. That we are saying that it leaves space and scope for corrections of the mistake that might be committed. Another one is that it provides an accountable, responsive and legitimate government that we studied in the political outcome, isn't it? Because it creates a accountable government. How it creates an accountable government? Because in a democracy, citizens have the right to choose their leaders and control over them. As a result, this democratic government becomes an accountable government. How it becomes a responsive government? Because it promotes the formation of public opinions and cares about the opinions and needs of the and expectations of the citizens. In that way, this democratic government cares at the expectations and needs of the citizens and their opinions. It becomes responsive also. And it is a legitimate government. That means people's own government, isn't it? Because it is elected by the peoples themselves through elections at regular intervals. In that way, we can call it as a legitimate government. Because of all this also, this democracy is considered as the best form of government when compared with dictatorship. Another one, it's people's own government. Next is, most of its decisions are taken keeping in mind their accessibility to the people, isn't it? In a democratic rule, their rulers, means the representatives, they take all the decisions by keeping in mind the accessibility of the accessibility of the people that we can't predict in a dictator or any other forms of government. The next one, it provides transparent forms and procedures of decision making, isn't it? That means a democratic government, it provides a transparency in its norms and procedures of decision making, because the citizens, they are very clear about whatever decisions are taken by their representatives, because they are following all the procedures in that. And the last one, it honestly tried to reduce inequality and poverty. In a democratic rule, they are honestly trying their best to reduce the inequality and poverty in the country. So because of all these merits, we can't say that this democratic rule is not the best, and the dictatorship is always creating economic development in the country. because if any slight change is there in the economic rate of the dictatorship when compared with democracy, but that is the only merit this dictatorship is having, but our democracy is having a lot of many other merits, so it is considered as the best form of government. Maybe more than development, it is reasonable to expect democracy to reduce economic disparity and equal distribution of wealth. If this will happen, that a country achieves economic growth, then another question will arise there. Will it distribute its wealth among all citizens in the country and help them to lead a better life? Can we expect this in a democratic country? Do economic inequality and poverty problems were reducing in a democratic country? All these we are discussing in detail in this topic, reduction of inequality and poverty. Democracy is based on a fundamental principle of political equality, which ensures each adult citizen must have one vote and each vote must have one value. So, what is the main principle behind this political equality? It explains or ensures that each adult citizen in a democratic country must have one vote and each vote must have one value. At the same time, it also recognizes that the poorest and the least educated has the same status as the rich and the educated. So, the political equality, it also explains about every citizen is having one vote and each vote is having the same value or one value. At the same time, it also explains that the poorest and the least educated has the same status as the rich and the educated. People are not subjects of a ruler, they are the ruler themselves. It is also another idea behind this political equality, because under the control of a dictator or a kingship, we are not rulers, we are only subjects. But here we are rulers by ourselves, because we are electing our own rulers, isn't it? We are electing our own rulers, and it is that means our representative itself ruling the country. Even when they make mistake, they are responsible for their conduct also. So even when they make any mistakes, we are just giving them a chance to correct their mistakes, and all these we are having under the political equality. So this is one of the main principle behind this democracy, that is a principle of political equality. The principle of universal adult franchise has now come to be accepted all over the world. Yet, there are many instances of denial of equal right to vote. So, the principle of universal adult franchise has now come to be accepted almost all over the world. Yet, there are many other cases where there is a denial of equal right to vote that we are going to study next. Some of these examples. For example, in Saudi Arabia, women do not have the right to vote. If they are just in recent years they are having the right to vote, then also there are some cases where they were strictly not permitted to just have the right to vote. Another example is the example of Estonia. Estonia has made its citizenship rules in such a way that people belonging to Russian minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. So another example is the example of Estonia, in which they made some rules that the citizenship is made in such a way that people belonging to Russian minority find it difficult to get the right to vote. The third example is the example of Fiji. In Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fiji has more value than that of an Indian Fijian. So once again, in Fiji, the electoral system is such that the vote of an indigenous Fijian is more than that of an Indian Fijian. So, from all this, we can understand that even though most of the democratic countries in the world they are not able to follow the principle of political equality, which is a base of the fundamental principle of democracy in the proper way. But in our country, India, we are 100% following or fulfilling this principle of political equality in all its importance. So far as India is concerned, the success achieved in the arena of political equality to the individuals could not be achieved in the economic field also. We observe increasing inequalities in the field of economic growth. So there are some problems, isn't it? That's why we don't have that much of equality in the field of economic growth or economic rate when we are comparing it with the political equality. So why we are not having that economic equality in our country? Just like the political equality, we are having only economic inequalities and poverty problems in our country. Why? Because a small number of ultra rich people enjoy a highly disproportionate share of wealth and incomes. Not only that, their share in the total income of the country has been increasing a lot. So, a small number of ultra rich people enjoy a high proportionate share of wealth and income. Not only that, their share in the total income of the country has been increasing. That is one reason why we don't have any economic inequality in our country. On the other hand, we want to understand that those at the bottom of the society have very little to depend upon. The income have been declining day by day. Sometimes people from lower level of the social ladder find it difficult to meet their basic needs of life, such as food, clothing, house, education, and health. So, why we are not having the social or economic equality in our country? Why? Because those who are rich, they are ultra rich in the society. They are enjoying all benefits in their life and their income is increasing day by day because they are having a lot of resources with them, isn't it? But those who are poor, those who are at the lower level of the social ladder, they are living in a very poverty and their income is declining day by day, and it's very difficult to meet their basic needs of life such as food, clothing, house, education, and health. For example, in Bangladesh, more than half of the population lives in poverty. People in several countries are now dependent on rich countries even for food supplies. So once again, for example, in Bangladesh, more than half of the population lives in poverty. People in several countries are now dependent on rich countries even for food supplies. So it can be said that in actual life, democratic government in India does not appear to be very successful in reducing economic inequalities, isn't it? So from all this we can understand that in actual life, democratic government in India does not appear to be very successful in reducing economic inequalities. So these are the main ideas or points included in the economic outcomes of democracy. Now we are going to study about the third one, that is the social outcomes of democracy, in the topic accommodation of social diversity. So in this topic related to social outcomes, first we want to understand whether democracy lead us a peaceful and harmonious life. It will only a fair expectations. Then also we want to think about it in detail, whether democracy leads us a peaceful and a harmonious life. Because from the first chapter itself, it is clear that democracy helped to accommodate ethnic populations and also helped to develop a procedure to conduct their competitions. And democracy is also doing all this only to reduce the possibility of tension before becoming it explosive or violent. So now we are going to study in detail how democracy lead a peaceful and harmonious life in the topic accommodation of social diversity. So democracy lead to peaceful and harmonious life among citizens because it provides a conducive political environment to citizens for their popular participation in politics. Isn't it? Democracy help the citizens to participate in their political activities. A popular participation of the citizens is there in this democracy. Every citizen has the right to vote and the right to conduct elections also. It is also happening in a democracy. It stands for equal economic status to all citizens. It helps by accommodating various social divisions and providing social equality to its citizens. So once again, democracy, it helps the citizens to popularly participate in politics. And it just gives the citizens the right to vote and the right to conduct elections. And the democracy also stands for equal status to all citizens, equal economic status to all citizens. And democracy also helps to accommodate various social divisions and provide social equality to all its citizens. Democracy also helps to reduce possibility of tensions because before becoming it explosive and violent. It has mechanism to negotiate the differences. In a democracy, the majority always need to work with the minority so that government functions could represent the general view. So democracy, it also helps to reduce the possibility of tensions and try to make before making it explosive and violent. The democracy having some mechanism to negotiate the differences. At the same time, it also help the always help the minorities because the majority always need to work with the minority so that the government function could represent the general view. From all because the democracy is following all these basic principles, that's why in democratic government we can see a peaceful and a harmonious life. Always democracy is giving importance to a peaceful and harmonious life to its citizens. So the main idea related to the social outcomes of democracy is that democracy is having the ability to handle social differences, divisions, and conflicts. And it is a basic outcome of democracy, isn't it? It's democracy is having the ability to handle different types of social differences, social divisions, and social conflicts that is having in our society. It is a basic outcome of democracy. And a non-democratic regime often turn a blind eye to or suppress internal social differences. But democratic regimes, they never been a blind eye on these problems, on the internal social differences or internal social issues. They always give importance to it and they try to overcome these issues. No society can fully and permanently resolve conflicts among different social groups, but democracy evolves mechanism to negotiate the differences. So in no other society among the dictatorship of any other forms, they are not able to resolve the conflicts among their different groups the proper way. But in democracy, we are having the mechanism to solve these differences. Democracy usually develop a procedure to conduct their competition. This reduces the possibility of tension becoming explosive or violent. So just having a procedure to conduct the competitions and to overcome the tensions before becoming it explosive or violent. Democracy also provides the only peaceful solution to every problem. In democracy, no one is a permanent winner and no one is a permanent loser. Different groups can live with one another peacefully. So, in a diverse country like India, democracy keeps our country together in a peaceful and harmonious manner. So, another important idea behind this democracy is that democracy provides the only peaceful solution to every problem that arose in this political outcome, which is that democracy gives always makes us understand that no one is a permanent gainer or winner, or no one is a permanent loser in the society. Different groups can live with one another peacefully. In a diverse country like India, democracy keeps our country together. That means democracy helps us to have unity, peacefulness, diversity, and harmonious among citizens. So, in a democratic country like India, we can overcome all the problems and we will have social equality in our country. Next topic related to the social outcome of democracy is about the dignity and freedom of the citizens. So, democracy stands much superior to any other form of government in promoting dignity and freedom of the individual. So, what is the meaning of this dignity and freedom of the citizens? It refers to the respect from fellow beings, equal treatment of all citizens, and individual freedom in the society. So, once again, what is the meaning of dignity and freedom of the citizens? Dignity and freedom of the citizens refers to the respect from fellow beings, equal treatment of all citizens, and individual freedom in the society. Every individual wants to receive respect from its fellow beings. Often conflicts arise among individuals because some feel that they are not treated with due respect. The passion for respect and freedom are the basis of democracy. And democracy throughout the world have recognized this, at least in principle also. So, this has been achieved in various degrees in various democracies that we are going to study in detail how the dignity of individual is promoted in a democratic country. So now we are going to study in detail how the dignity of an individual is promoted in a democracy. How our dignity is promoted in democracy, because every individual dignity is having equal importance in democracy. Every individual wants to receive respect from fellow beings. Often conflicts arise among individuals because some feel that they are not treated well with due respect by our fellows beings. While the passion for respect and freedom are the basis for democracy, for societies which have been built for long on the basis of subordinations and dominations, it is not simple matter to recognize that all individuals are equal. In such a situation, democracy stands much superior to any other form of government in promoting dignity and freedom of the individual. Isn't it? Because those societies which were built on the basis of some dominations and some other caste prejudices, all that, they are not giving that much of dignity to each and every individual and freedom to the individual. But it is the democracy that stands much superior to any other form of government in promoting dignity and freedom of the individual in equal basis. Most societies across the world were historically male dominated societies. Long struggles by women have created some sensitivity today that respect to and equal treatment of women are necessary ingredients of a democratic society. Similarly, democracy in India has strengthened the claims of discriminated caste for equal status. So, in our country, if we are giving equal importance to the dignity and freedom of the individuals, then only the stand of the women or the dignity of the women and caste inequalities will be away from our country. Because we can say that in democracy, equal importance is given to the dignity of the individuals and freedom of the individuals. That's why in a democratic country we can see the dignity of women is respected in our country, and we can see that there is no caste discriminations in our country. This way democracy safeguard the dignity of individuals. In order to know in detail about the dignity of the individual, we are having an example. Take the case of the dignity of women in a democratic country and in a non-democratic country. Most societies across the world were historically male-dominated societies that we know very well. Long struggles by women have created some sensitivity that today that respect to and equal treatment to women are necessary ingredients of a democratic society. Only because of the long struggles of women, the respect to and equal treatment of women are considered as necessary ingredients of a democratic society. That does not mean that women are always actually treated with respect. But once the principle is recognized, it becomes easier for women to wage a struggle against what is now unacceptable legally and morally. Because if the women's dignity is recognized, then they will be getting a stand to struggle against their problems in a legal way. But in a non-democratic setup, this unacceptability would not have legal basis, because the principle of individual freedom and dignity would not have the legal and moral force there. So, from this we can say that democracy has maintained the dignity of women in the country comparing to a non-democratic country. So just like the example of dignity of women, another example we want to study related to this area is the caste inequalities or inequalities based on caste system. When we are comparing this idea in the democratic and non-democratic country, it is very clear to you that democracy is still giving importance to the dignity and freedom of each and every individual in their country. Because in a democratic country like India, they are strengthening the claims of the disadvantages and discriminations based on caste for equal status and equal opportunities of the individuals. But in a non-democratic country, still there are cases of caste-based inequalities and atrocities, but these lack the moral and legal foundations also. So, there is no lack of moral and legal foundations in a democratic country, but this lag is there in a non-democratic country. Because of all this, it is recognized that it is recognized by the ordinary citizens and make them understand the value of the democratic rights or the value of the rights given by the democracy to each and every individual. These are the things that only democracy can provide, like giving dignity to women and also just avoiding caste inequalities from our country. Another great idea related to the social outcome of democracy is that resolving the complaints of the people is considered as the testimony to the success of democracy. That means dissatisfaction of the people shows the success of democracy. How this will happen, that we are going to understand next. Expectations from democracy also function as a criteria for judging any democratic country, isn't it? We expect a lot from a democratic country. If we are getting that expectations in the full fledged, we can consider that as a good democratic government. If we are not able to fulfill our expectations, we always blame that democratic government. The distinctive features about democracy is that its examination never gets over, isn't it? So, one of the most distinctive feature of the democracy is that its examination never gets over. As democracy passes one test, it produces another test. So, as a result of this, what happened? As people get some benefits of democracy, they ask for more and want to make democracy even better and ask about the way democracy functions and many complaints also. So, when we are getting benefit from the democracy, then we are expecting more from that, and we want to have better whatever we are getting. We want more better than that. At the same time, we also we also give ideas about some of the drawbacks of the democracy also. The fact that people are complaining is itself a testimony to the success of democracy. If we are pointing out these are demerits of democracy with the help of our opposition parties, it is a success of that democratic government, because that ruling party, they always try to overcome their demerits to just govern the country in the proper way and to hold their power. So this complaints is considered as a testimony to the success of democracy. A public expression of dissatisfaction with democracy shows the success of the democratic project. It transforms people from the status of a subject into that of a citizen. It isn't it? Because this democratic government, they transfer we the people from the status of subjects to that of citizens, because as a citizen we are having our fundamental rights and duties, and there is a constitution is there in the democratic government to safeguard our rights and duties, and we are having full dignity also, and we are having freedom also. So that benefits we are getting, or advantages we are getting as a part of this democratic government. Most individuals today believe that their votes make a difference to the way the government is run and to their own self-interest. So, individuals, they are giving importance to their votes also, their universal franchise, because they thought that there is a room to correct the mistakes, because if our ruling party is a ruling government is committing any mistakes, then what we as citizens or as voters, what we are doing, we are not giving importance to that party in the next election, isn't it? So, because of all these reasons, we can say that if complaints are there in a democratic government, then it leads to the success of that government. Another important idea related to the social outcome of democracy or a democratic form of government is that democracy allows room to correct mistakes. How does happen in a democratic government? That is the next topic we want to study. So no form of government is free of mistakes, isn't it? Whether it is a dictatorship or a kingship or a military rule or a democratic form of government, they are not free of mistakes. Mistakes do take place. Democracy too is no expectation. It is a better form of government because it allows room to correct its own mistakes. So, democracy, when compared with other forms of government, it is better. Why? Because it allows room to correct its own mistakes. But any other form of government, they are not having this type of chance to correct the mistakes. The advantage of democracy is that mistakes, if any, cannot be kept hidden for long. Sooner or later, the public comes to know about them. There is always a space for public discussions on these mistakes, and there is a room for correction as well. So in democracy, we can't hide out those mistakes, because the public, they came to understand it, and they will conduct public discussions and debates on these mistakes, and they try to correct the mistakes also. And correction of mistakes results in either the rulers changing their decisions or the rulers themselves can be changed through an election. That we are knowing very deeply, isn't it? If in a democratic country, if the rulers, that means the representatives of the people, if they are taking any decisions which is against the rights and wishes of we the citizens, we always trying to force our ruling party to change it. If they are not changing their decisions, then what we do? In the next election, we are just giving them a chance to just make them understand that their decisions are wrong by not electing them in the next election. Such a correction of mistakes or change cannot take place in a non-democratic government. So, this is one of the main basic outcome of democracy because it allows each and every citizen and in our country to correct our mistakes. The democracy is giving a room to correct the mistakes. So now we should have a quick recall about what we studied in this video. So we studied in this video about the economic outcome and the social outcomes of democracy. In economic outcomes, first we studied the economic growth and development of a democratic country and a non-democratic country, and the merits of democracy. That also we studied the advantages of a democratic government. Then we studied another topic related to this economic outcome, that is reduction of inequality and poverty. In that we studied what is the meaning of this term political equality and why we are giving a lot of importance to this principle of political equality in a democratic political setup. Then about the conditions democracy help in reduction of equality and poverty. That also we studied in detail. Then in social outcome, we studied how the democracy helped to solve the problems. Then we studied how democracy helped to lead a peaceful and harmonious life among citizens. It also helps us to understand the dignity of women as a part of dignity and freedom of the citizens. Then about how the dignity of the individual is promoted in or safeguarded in our democratic country. Then how this problems or resolving the complaints is considered as a testimony to the success of democracy. Then how democracy allows to correct or allows a room to correct its own mistakes. So, and we also, apart from all these, we studied how democracy stands much superior among the other different forms of government in the world. So all these we studied as a part of these outcomes of democracy. Dear children, please watch the video very carefully. Copy down all the important points related to the statement because many statement questions are coming from this chapter. So watch the video very carefully and copy down all the points related to these statements and study well. And read your textbook 3 or 4 times. Okay, thank you.